All right, welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. My name is Matt.
I'm Joe.
And today we have with us a special guest, Ben Harber. Ben, say hi.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Ben.
What's up?
Hey, Ben. If you're not familiar with Ben, he is one of those people who's a friend of Flight Test. You'll see him in and out of occasional videos, definitely at almost every Flight Fest. He has an affinity for jets, but he has, in the last couple of years, started to bring his builds giant scale, to say the least. So we're here to talk to him about some of his projects, but I also know he's kind of like me, a dad trying to get people excited about the hobby. And I'd love to pick his brain on how he does some of that. So we'll get into that in a minute. Definitely want to have a quick thanks to our listeners for spreading the word. I'd love to thank our patrons for helping keep the lights on. If you want to become a patron, you can join in at patreon.com/aviationrcnoob. But why don't we start in? We're going to change up a little bit. We're going to talk about what we're doing for the week, and then we're going to just talk to Ben and get to know Ben. And then we'll head up at the end. We'll start talking about some of the community highlights, some of the things that he's been seeing as we build up to Flight Fest as well. And then I think we have a little bit of a special, not about a special, but we have a history segment here. I think Ben can at least be interested in, because it has some ties to his history as well. So let's get going. Joe.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with you, and I'll go, and then we'll hand it back. We'll hand it over to Ben and just start talking to him.
Okay, so what am I doing?
What have you been doing for the last couple weeks, Joe?
Oh, right.
In the hobby.
Bad humor. My bad. So I finished up. I don't think the last time we spoke that I had finished up the Noob Wonder. I think I was getting close, but hadn't fully finished it.
Right.
So that's been finished. It's got a few flights on it at this point.
Whoa. Wait a second. You made it look pretty and put it in the air and brought it back home? One piece?
I did, in one piece.
Is it
I didn't hear him
dented?
say anything about it looking pretty.
It still looks all right.
Well,
He said it was finished and it flew.
Right. That's a good point. But I
Yeah.
saw some pictures. I knew that he's at least made it
Oh,
look
okay.
more
Yeah.
than just a piece of white foam board folded up.
So, yeah. Excuse me. I have some of your old purple colored tape that you'd left here a long time ago.
It's your colored purple tape now.
I'd say you can pick it up this weekend when you come down if you want it.
No. I got a whole separate roll.
Okay. So I prettied it up a bit with that, and then I got the Aura 5 light put on it. And have been doing some flying with that. And I maidened it briefly. You were on the phone with me for that, and then the next day, basically, I took my worship leader's kid out flying with it, and I took the buddy box. Forgot my secondary antenna for wireless buddy boxing.
Okay, but so you guys were able to still do it though?
Yeah. So his sister, who used to be one of my students in student tech, had just found a random coax cable earlier that day, and she's like, "Would this work?" I'm like, "That's perfect." So I was still able to buddy box with him, and I took it out, flew the majority of a battery through it, real gentle flying, and then I gave it, swapped out the battery, got it up in the air, and eventually handed it off to him. And I told him, I would be real quick to take it from you. Don't take that as an insult, but I'm nervous with this thing because I've not been doing a lot of flying. So if I see you get anywhere remotely like where I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to grab it. Just know that. But also know that if I grab it, I got it. If you get in trouble, I'm going to grab it. On the drive out there, I was doing a lot of explaining about what flying is, some of the mechanics behind it, why, a plane's in the air, what happens when you roll it, where's the lift go, so why does it turn, and things you got to take into account. So it was interesting going through a lot of that.
He stayed with you after you got there?
Yep.
You didn't just start running?
Well, I was his ride, and we were 20 minutes across town, so
Captive audience.
That's right.
No, that's excellent.
I like your thought process, Ben. But So got it in the air, let him fly it, and took it from him a couple times, and then I got more comfortable with the idea of somebody flying it, knowing that with the Aura 5 that he was going to be okay.
Yeah.
So he ended up smacking some leaves in a tree, but I didn't see any damage. But we heard it. But I don't know. There was no damage, so you couldn't prove it.
Why, are you going to hold it against him later? Come on now.
No. Yeah, I told him on the drive out, if this thing crashes, it crashed because I let it crash. Even if you think you've got control of it, I was the one who had ultimate control. If I didn't switch it and take control, that's my fault. If I switched it and if I took control and still crashed it, that's still on me. So have fun, fly, don't feel bad about it. I didn't want him having that pressure, and he had a blast. But I'm also recognizing that as I've got this young person who hasn't flown this RC planes before, and I'm taking him out, and I'm going to take him out some more and have him fly some more. I'd like to loan him some electronics to get him started and this that. But just that one outing, constantly throughout it, was me realizing he's learning from me. I'm setting the tone. I'm setting an example, and kind of picking and choosing. Okay, at what am I going to make a point of at this moment? What do I let kind of slide in? He doesn't have to know that right this second. I just have to be aware that he's handling the plane in such a way that if the prop spun up, it's going to be a problem. So I make absolutely sure that I've got control, and I'm not, because I don't want to flood him with a million different, you can't do this, you got to do this, you got to go about this way. I kind of want to introduce it to him in stages, but where that really came to life were two instances where, one, he was carrying the plane back after I landed it, and he was holding it by the wings, one hand on each wing, but he had it facing him. And so if it had fired up, he probably could have kept it from coming at him, but it would have been trying to come right at him. Mm-hmm. So the next time I take him out, I want to instruct him in proper handling and carrying of a craft and being aware of. But the other thing that struck me was I was handling it. I had the plane in my hand. He had his transmitter. I had already walked him through the controls, and I was telling him, when you hear the sound, and I went to flip the switch to give him control, and I didn't look over at his throttle, and he had his throttle up, and that prop jumped. Now, fortunately, it didn't do anything other than just spin up. My hand wasn't in the way, but in that moment, it occurred to me, I handed control of a plane over, it didn't even, I wasn't aware where my hand was relative to it. So,
or confirming controls. No.
So I'd already confirmed that the controls were doing what they were supposed to do during the setup.
On his side, when you do the handoff, checking.
Is he in zeroed out? Yeah, absolutely. So that was as I'm transitioning, hopefully more and more into a mentoring and teaching role. There's just a whole new layer of learning of. Now you got to be aware of all this stuff, so it was interesting.
Definitely.
Hopefully I didn't bore anybody with that.
No, that was interesting. Actually, I'm curious if when you did the Aurora board, oftentimes they kind of come set up. How was your experience about basically putting that into a pretty standard, 3-channel plane? And getting it responding in the appropriate way, because part of what you want the board there to do is to help, even out the the peaks and valleys of flying.
There were a lot of expectations I had about it rolling in that did not align with how it actually operated. For one, sort of the big glaring one, once I got it all set up and got it up in the air, for whatever reason, I kind of assumed it would perfectly trim out the plane. And it doesn't do that.
Oh.
And I guess I knew that you could trim it and then save those trims to the board, but first time flying a flight controller, I'm not sure what to expect. So it was constantly pulling to the left, and that was in my control surfaces. They weren't perfectly set up. So it was pulling to the left, and I guess the board just has to assume you're in the general area of level, and then you use your trim to tell it where level actually is, because it constantly pulled to the left. I was trimming it out. I went in and set sub trim so I could get more trim out of it. And then I realized once I set the sub trim, the auto takeoff wouldn't work, or the launch assist wouldn't work because you had trims in it.
Yeah.
Trims had to be zeroed out. And so that was a big thing, but I'm figuring that out.
Okay.
It really, really throttles your input control. I'm giving it full right on the stick, which ought to send that thing into just whoop, 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 but it's full right is just barely kind of turning.
Is that in the 6-axis mode or just the?
That's in full 6-axis, yeah.
Yeah. I had one of those in a Scout, the FT Scout, that my wife built, or we built together. The fluid edge water. Yeah, purple and white one. And even she didn't, and she's never flown before, and so even she didn't care for that mode. And I couldn't hardly make it go around the sky. It was so infuriating. And maybe this is just me. Sorry, I sound like an old curmudgeon. That's not flying. So I get it. Flight controllers have their place, but that mode, or the way it's implemented, or whatever, even she had trouble with it, and so I flipped it into the just angle limit.
Right, where you're not going to go past 60 degrees. It's enough to get you in trouble, but it's not
just a rate. Yeah,
fast.
it's a rate damping mode, or it's a rate mode, and she was able to fly it like a champ. So,
okay,
that may be something. So I gotta look more into how the board operates, because I know there's like 6-axis and 3-axis, but then there's like low rate and high rate. So I've got to look a little more into what I've got the switch set up to switch those modes, but I need to look into what modes I'm actually operating with.
Basic setup for your conventional airplanes, either Elevon or normal 3-surface plane, are fine. They work great out of the box. But there are actually a ton of customizable ways you can set it up in the configurator, which I haven't played with in a while. But when I first got one, I really dug into it, and I was there's a lot of different options that you can set up. You can change. You can have the 6-axis and the rate modes, or you can change on what's on the switch. Like you can ditch 6-axis altogether, and you can have different versions of rate mode and with different values, and so there's a lot you can actually do with it. It's a pretty powerful little piece of kit.
Yeah,
but it if you want to go beyond stick it in an Elevon plane or a 3-channel plane, it'll take a little bit of learning.
Okay.
And I've been in that configurator. Reason being, I could not. I'm ended up talking more than I intended to, but it's good information for somebody to know. I use.
It might be good information for us if we're going to put those in the big noobs.
This is true too. So, or something similar, yeah. So I have a Radio Master T16S, TX16S. But I'm still using my old FR Sky, I think, receivers.
The Turnigy X9D or whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, the IA9- something, yeah. So I'm still using those receivers, and I'm great with those receivers. They've really not given me any trouble. The only signal issue I had was when I lost the Spitfire that time, and I was flying over a neighborhood perforated with Wi-Fi. So, to be expected. But to be fair, Ben, I didn't realize I was that far out. I was not
I was looking
intentionally
at him
flying
like,
over them.
Yours looks
do.
too far. Last time I was that far, we hit trees, and you're way past that.
Yeah. So
like
he was
you need to come
just
in.
telling me to bring it in, and I said I don't have control anymore. But so with that receiver, with the board, it wants to use the S bus.
Yeah.
The RF5 wants to use the S bus. My receiver says I bus, but it can actually do S bus. I can go into the transmitter module and set it as that, set it to connect to that receiver and send the S bus. It does work. It was sending signals to the board. It paired up. Everything was great. The issue was I could not, when I, basically my ailerons worked fine, but then when I went to my elevator would not operate on its channel, and when I would push like my stick to the left, my ailerons would go like they were going to the left, but then when I went to the right, they would go like they were going to the right, and my elevator would kick in. Or it was weird, but for whatever reason, my elevator was receiving aileron input. Yeah, check my transmitter, check the mode, make sure I set up the AR or the aura right per its instructions, and nothing was fixing it. And I ended up having to pull down the configurator, open it up, and confirm that it's not it doesn't even see the elevator channel as receiving anything. It's getting it like through the S bus, whatever. It's getting it through the aileron channel. It's mixed somehow, and so I had to go into it's set up to learn my transmitter and its inputs and go through that wizard and run through it that way, and then everything finally started working right. So it was more involved than just pulled out the box for me, but I'm not using Spectrum or one of the other couple brands that it listed off as being ready to come out the box ready for. So when we're using
that may be with the fact that you're using the iBus switch to S-Bus or whatever, something going on in there with channel assigning, because I don't use Spectrum and I've got all Free Sky stuff, and I was able to use FR Sky with S-Bus out with Aura pretty much out of the box and didn't play with it.
Okay, then maybe it's that iBus to S-Bus conversion that my radio's doing. I don't know. The end of it is that it did work.
Hey, there you go. That's a win.
Yeah, I really like takeoff assist. That's nice.
True.
When it's working right, it's awesome. It's
I don't
when you
like
think it's
how
working right.
Trims.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. My experience has been that when it handles when a takeoff assist and it's actually in takeoff assist is when you have a crash plane pretty quick. You're like, oh, it'll take care of this, no big deal. And you toss it and you go, oh no, it's not doing anything at all. Yeah, I've had that happen about 50% of the time I put my Piranha in the air.
Oh, bummer.
Whatever. It's thankfully it's a very durable plane, so
you mean the
yeah.
That was so much fun watching that thing rip up and down the field at Fly Fest.
Yeah, the speed of it brings me joy for sure.
That's cool.
Anyway, so we should probably get back and see if we can't finish up what we've been doing this past week. Is that what you've been working on? Do you do anything else in the last couple weeks, Joe, or are you?
No, it's been finished up the Wandering God in the Air a bit, and then it's been nasty weather.
You work on the Flurkin?
No. Okay. Though Yankee kind of threw the gauntlet down on me, so yeah, I gotta finish that. I gotta have it ready for Flight Fest.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. No. I put him up to it. No, I didn't put him up to it, but I should have. I appreciate it.
It's fine. That nice. Once I get going, that ought to go it'll quick enough, and then the Spitfire's almost half done. Construction wise, so.
Awesome.
It's fine. I think this build night, which will be before this episode goes out, I think I'll spend a good bit of this Friday night making servo extenders, because that's sort of what's holding me up on the Spitfire.
Okay. All right.
What about you? Briefly.
Yeah, what I've been working on, I'm trying to, hold on, let me go to the end. About a week ago, I went out with Amy, and I'm like, I'll just teach her how to fly on the new Wonder, because it flies so gentle. And while it's got a lot to it, it can go pretty low, which is pretty cool. And I set up rates so that it'd be gentle and all that kind of stuff. And I let it go, and it was a good day. It was really generally a good day, like low winds, all that kind of stuff. And I think I left the throttle a little bit too high for her, because it was around like 40%, 30% or something like that. And on that plane with that motor setup, that started to book. So she basically rolled it really quick. And she did like half of a circuit. So she was doing pretty good, generally speaking. And then kind of, how it gets in that orientation you're not so familiar with.
Uh-huh.
So she kind of she went one direction, and it was the wrong direction. She's like, oh, what direction? She went the one way and panicked. And so when you panic, what do? You turn it the same way, of course, because that always makes it better. And then you go, oh no, this is even worse. I need to pull out of it. What do you do to pull out? You pull back on the stick because you want to go higher, except when you're inverted, that means it goes into the dirt. That's essentially what she did.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no. And I'm like, and I didn't set up the buddy box, because I was like, it's really gentle. I've watched her fly on the simulator a bunch of different planes, and she's done a number of circuits and landed it. Like, I've watched her, and I'm like, okay, you have this. She had one of those little like F-22s with a little pusher, like an easy setup, where,
Cool.
I mean, she was killing it. I didn't have to do much. Every once in a while, I have to be like, no, you need to go to the right, not left. Oh, right, kind of deal. And then, not a big deal. So anyway, she doinked it into the dirt pretty hard. And it is a testament to the solidity of the build that Spons has put together, because that thing is built like a brick. And so it cracked right at the front edge of the wing, down the fuselage a little bit. So it kind of just pulled away. So that I fixed up with some glue and pushed it back in place, and another layer of tape on top, and it was back in perfect shape. I kind of had to massage out a little bit of a crinkle in the side. And there was some, like, the wingtip had a little bit of damage that needed to be glued back, and kind of smoothed out a hair. And that was it. That was the damage.
That's just
and
RC weathering.
Right, exactly. That's what I told her. I said, now I don't have to worry about when it's in combat and I doink it in. I won't be like, oh, my perfect plane. Like, no, it's good. We're ready. We're ready for all the things. And she's like, oh, I don't know. I feel terrible. And of course she feels terrible. Every new person trying to fly a plane feels awful when they dink it in. I'm like, dude, that's how you learn. I hate to say it. That's how you learn. And then she's like, well, but this is like the one. I'm like, I took all the pictures I needed. I've done that. I've flown it with Joe, right? I've flown it with Joe. We have video of it flying with Joe. I've used it in the build video. I've used it in a bunch of promotional videos. I'm done with needing that plane, and I'm building 3 others. Like, I'm going to build many more. We already have one over there. I've got and so the other one was taking my son's plane. He told me he wanted it green and purple. And so I'm like, well, how do you feel about the Hulk? And he's like, that would be pretty cool. So we're going to Hulk it up. So we're going to have a Hulk Wonder, a Hulk Noob Wonder. We'll get that going on. So I was working on that a little bit today. But as I'm doing that, I'm also dinking around trying to figure out and implement the last couple bits of how do we put this big Noob Wonder into pieces in the back of a van that's going to be filled with a ton of other planes and a bunch of idiots. I mean us. How are we going to fit all that stuff in there and still have it be, a viable, solid plane when we're done? How do we fold up that back section? And so I came up with a couple solutions. So I'm working at implementing those. And those are kind of like the last little bits that I'm putting
time's
together.
ticking if you're bringing it down this weekend.
Tell me about it. Look, all I got to say is it's the end of the school year. Baseball is apparently in absolute full swing. I've got practices and games every single night of every week for the last month, as well as end of grade stuff. My kids are going away, so I'm spending the last time I can, as much as I can with them. But boy, oh boy, they're about to go. And that means I got full tilt. So what I'm trying to do is get that stuff done in the next 2 days, which I think should be doable. Really, very doable. I'm in the last kind of bits of that. I've already got the popsicle sticks all drilled out, and I've got all the slots for the barbecue skewers for the hinges on all the ailerons and all that kind of stuff, as well as I'm playing around with what I'm going to do to make it look interesting. So, because that's going to have to be taken care of at least a little bit before, it doesn't have to be super pretty, but it sure does. It would be nice if I could tell top from bottom.
Nah.
I know it's overrated, right?
Well, who needs orientation?
I know that's pretty much, but that's and I also bought when I went to the DMV a couple of weeks ago. I picked up a Scout for my my youngest Aero Scout to be able to have him fly because that's stabilized and he can do it without the buddy box. He's another one where you can do it, and so having that available, and then when he leaves, I can have Amy learn on it so she can get back on her feet and feel good about it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I started putting that together, and that literally took 10 minutes to put together. So I'm spending more time putting the controls in the radio. It was less than 10 minutes. It's literally like I'm putting in the landing gear and I go, oh, and the magnetic catches, pull it in, and it clips it in place and it's ready to go. I'm like, what?
That's cool.
That plane is stupid simple to put together. It's one of the smartest beginner products I think I've seen, honestly, in all kinds of ways. And it's got the what is it, FR Sky stabilized board. It's in there with the stabilizer, so it's already set up, pretty much ready to go. I just need to figure out where their oh crap button is. Like, I don't have that. I have a T16, so I need to remap that to one of the buttons on my thing and have that work properly, as well as the rates setting. The beginner, intermediate, advanced modes. I need to set the modes and map that properly. And apparently I thought I knew what I was doing, and it didn't go. So it's like, all right, well, I got to figure that out before we go out. I figured that'd be helpful for anybody, really. We could probably use that board to put into a noob, and that would be all you'd need to really get it to fly stabilized and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be a quick solution to what could be a very complex problem if we put in a flight controller board, which is what I like to do. But anyway, all right. So that's what I'm up to the last couple of weeks. It's been busy doing mostly other things.
That's sort of how life goes.
Especially this time.
Unfortunately. We grew up at some point, and now we can't play with our toys all day.
But can I throw a tantrum?
I mean, you can. That's a choice you can make.
Just don't do it in front of your kids.
I know it's not a good plan.
Every choice has consequences.
Ain't that
That's right.
the truth? Ben, speaking of consequences, you made a couple choices. What have you been up to in the last couple weeks?
Well, last week, actually, I was on vacation. My family and I, along with my sister's family and my parents, we all drove up to D.C. For a week. And
Nice.
all our kids are homeschooled, so we kind of combined it and made it a historical, U.S. history and, geographical learning experience. And I learned stuff. We all learned some stuff. None of us. Oh, my parents have been to D.C. because my dad's gone there on business. But the rest of us, none of us have been to D.C. before, so it was fun learning experience. So many highlights. There was a huge, I did 3 pick dumps on Facebook to get them all uploaded. Was the main aerospace museum open on the mall, or did you have to go out to Virginia? Yes, it was. But we did both. The air and space on the mall was open, but only partially, which actually I didn't know ahead of time, and I would have budgeted less time there had I known that we didn't need so much time, because 2/3 of the building was closed off for whatever they're doing. It still is cool to see. I'll admit I was a little let down by scope of it, but a lot of it was closed off, so I can't really judge it fairly on the whole thing. But even in the midst of that, it was still really cool to see the original 1903 flyer and Apollo 13 capsule. Those are, I mean, and the Spirit of St. Louis, we couldn't go around it, but we could, like, it was in the closest portion of the closed off section of the building, so we could kind of like lean around a pole and see it. So I got a picture of it.
Okay.
And
yeah,
so
I
was
went
cool.
this summer. That's why I asked, because I went this summer and it was completely closed. So I was like,
okay.
oh, I guess we're not going there today.
Yeah, no.
We're gonna do something else. And then we went out to Virginia. So when you said you went to Virginia, how was that?
Yeah, so
What was your impression?
on the way out, we actually hooked up. We met with Carl Leidick and Joshua Orchard because they live
Oh,
in that
nice.
area, and both of them are always looking for excuses to go to Udvar-Hazy. So I was more than happy to oblige and give them the excuse to come look at airplanes again. So they kind of showed us around a little bit, and it was because it's kind of on the way out of the DC area. So on our way home, we met up on Friday and spent most of the day there. I mean, my son was just on cloud nine, seeing the Blackbird right there as you walk in.
Yeah, that's impactful.
Yeah, so he was and he loves the Blackbird, and we haven't talked about it much, but I guess somewhere had read and seen stuff about the Concorde, so he was like, "Can we go see the Concorde?" I'm like, "Son, we're gonna see all of them. Like, we're gonna start at that end, and we're gonna walk, and we're gonna see everything along the way to that end. Then we're gonna go back into the space, corner, and like, no, we will see it all."
I promise you, we will not miss anything. And my kids were like, "Okay, Dad, I think we've seen all the planes we can stomach. Is it possible that we could cut this short?" I'm like, you know what, guys? We plan trips, and this is the way I found success for us, is that they each get something that they want to do. So that way, when I pick something I want to do, which may be far more educational than they want, I go, well, look, we're going to do your thing, or we just did your thing.
Right.
And they're like, oh, fine, you're right. So, but I try to keep in mind that they're not.
It worked out well. I mean, the fact that we had such a bit of a larger group and so many adults, our adult to kid ratio was good. So we had more adults than kids.
Yeah.
And so we were able to kind of split up, and they didn't all have to hang around me as I gawked over this one thing. They want to go see that thing or go see that thing, and that was it worked out. So
what were your top 3 planes? Either ones that were a surprise or ones that you were just really excited to see.
Oh, that's a tough one. Gosh.
You're okay to change it later, and I mean,
Okay, so one of them is a Gossamer Albatross, which is the first human-powered airplane to cross the channel, the English Channel.
Yeah.
I didn't know that would be that they had that there, so that was a neat surprise to see, and to see it hanging there. And then as I was telling my wife about it and pointing it out, because it's near a catwalk or a spiral staircase where you can kind of go up and look across at it and look down on it. And as we're standing there looking at it, I'm telling her about it. She's like, "Oh, it moved." It's like, and the propellers kind of moved, and the whole thing just kind of breathed a little bit because it's that light. And just whatever current in the giant room happened to flow by it just kind of nudged it a little bit, and the whole thing kind of moved a little bit.
Yeah, it was enough to cause it to lift a little, just a hair.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's that light.
That's so cool.
And what else? There was a weird UAV that was an oblique wing test vehicle that I didn't know about. But it's basically so it's unmanned, but it still is a pretty large scale. The wingspan is probably 12, 13 feet.
Yeah.
But the way they do the swinging the mechanism is unique because it's basically a full-scale prop and slot. And so when I saw this thing hanging there, I could see the propeller, and it's in the middle of the airplane, and there's a duct around, a shroud around the propeller.
Right.
The wing is in the oblique configuration. But I'm like, how does the wing move in the propeller? And I had to actually use my phone camera to zoom in on where it was so that I could see the parting line where the wing basically swivels around the prop duct.
Yeah.
And so it's this weird, like, I'm making gestures and no one can see me except for you. But
it's okay.
It's like you picture two circles.
That's our listeners' favorite part of the podcast.
Yeah. So
I guarantee.
If you ever played with one of those little like gyroscope toys where you've got a circle and then a perpendicular to that another circle, that's essentially what it was, where the wing was pivoting around the outer circle.
Okay. Right. So the circle that's in plane with the wings was how it pivoted around the center of that circle, even though the other circle
shroud was inside that circle.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And so it worked. And so I was just like, I've never seen like we do prop and slot for RC all the time. I've never seen a oblique wing prop and slot RC, but the fact that like here's this full scale prop and slot, I just thought that's just the funniest thing to see actually realized.
It's a DSI NASA oblique wing.
There you go.
Yeah, nice, cool.
Yeah. I don't know, another unique thing or top thing.
It's really unusual looking. We're now seeing a video or a picture of it.
You pulled up pictures of it. It's when one of my, I think it was actually, I forget who pointed it out first. We're walking down this ramp and it's hanging above our heads and they're like, oh look, there's the NASA oblique wing. And I looked at it. I literally did a double take. I was like, what the heck is that?
Right.
I gotta look this thing up now.
Go look in the notes. It's I put in the notes for you.
It's unique. It's cool.
What is that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I must have missed that when I went through it. Because what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's super weird. Because I had known about the other oblique wing that NASA did. It was a manned one. But it was jet powered. So this one I had no clue about. Let's see, there was so many cool jets.
That's a good problem to have.
And I mean, all the, let's see. Oh man.
That sounds like a perfect. We should make a scale model, like a foam board version of that.
Oh yeah, that would be that little oblique wing. That would be hilarious. So, another unique thing that was cool to see was my grandpa, my mom's dad, worked for Douglas, and while he was there, they did contracts with NASA. He worked on the Skylab, and I knew about that. But what I didn't know was, I think it was Skylab. Skylab was before Shuttle, right?
Okay.
What
was it after? It was after.
Before. I mean, I want to say it could be, but all things in my mind come to how do they get it up there?
No, yeah, the Shuttle probably took Skylab up there. But another thing that he worked on.
1974 was when Skylab was done.
There was a payload that was carried by the space shuttle that was basically like a living quarter, or maybe it was a precursor to Skylab. It was basically a bigger section where the astronauts could go to in the bay. But to get there, you had to go somehow. You had to get from the cockpit, the forward nose area, that section, into the cargo bay, the bed of the pickup truck, and you had to get there not floating through space. So they made this transition gooseneck, and it literally looks like a giant periscope where it goes out a little ways and then up and then over. And so my dad was there talking about it, and so he told us that my grandpa Al also worked on the seal of that sealed that gooseneck transition thing in to like one end of the shuttle. So he was on that team that worked on that. And then
nice.
and like this transition module was sitting right there, so there was a thing that grandpa worked on. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of older space program items in that in that section. It's pretty. If you're not like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, whoa, there's a lot. My kids are like missing 80% of that.
Well, and I mean, and I'm glossing over so many things. I mean, the shuttle itself is just freaking massive.
Yeah, it takes up the whole thing and it dominates.
I've seen them on pole displays. Like there was one in LA. I think they moved it, or maybe that's the one that's here. But I've never. This was my first time walking up to one.
Right.
And the one of the things that just really hit me was standing underneath the rear of the wing, looking at the elevons, the control surfaces, and how massive they are. I mean, of course, the airplane, the shuttle itself is big. It's going to have big control surfaces, but the percent cord, like just the sheer cord, like just, I'm like, how does that move?
Yeah, the percentage of the cord depth that is the aileron surface. It's I thought that was supposed to be more like 10%, not like 30.
That's the thing. The cord percent is not big, but because the cord is so huge, so massive.
Okay, yeah.
It's like the length from a hinge line to trailing edge of the elevon was like 15 feet or 12 feet. It was just like, what the?
Yeah.
What does that move?
Hydraulics.
Yes, hydraulics. The magic of hydraulics.
They really
hydraulics and insane material engineering and science.
Yeah. No, hydraulics are amazing.
Yeah.
So that's what I was up to last week. A couple weeks ago, Obi and I went to Ceph.
How was that?
We flew stuff at Ceph. It was awesome. Far less rainy and wet than the forecast said it would be, so that was really nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Awesome.
And we both flew stuff. We both crashed stuff, and had a good time.
You got some good video of it too.
Thanks.
Of your kind of little bits and snippets of that, and I really appreciated you kind of putting that out there and bringing it to everybody who couldn't go.
I tried to capture as much as I could, or put as much as I could in that video without making it too insanely long. When I first put all the video in my phone, spoiler alert, I use iMovie on my iPhone to edit all of my YouTube videos.
Oh
wow. I'm very, very lazy.
It is convenient, isn't it?
When I first put all the clips into one project file, it was over an hour long.
Oh wow!
And so I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah, can't do
so
that.
I actually I didn't even include a ton of the demo videos. So a lot of the helicopter demos, which were really cool, and all the other 3D flight demos. And I justified it like, well, there's probably a ton of other people and official videos of the guys flying those things. There's other places you can find that video, but no one was following me around taking video of the random thing that I was flying. So those are the stuff that I shared.
Yeah, I saw you. I kind of pulling up the Waco glider with your son. Was your son flying the glider?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. That's cool.
That was Joshua Orchard made that. It's basically a scaled up from the flight test Waco. They put out a speedboat kit and plans for the Waco glider, and he wanted a bigger one for doing glider tows with his airplanes because he's got a bigger glider tow like trainer plane, not a scale plane. It's just a
it's
like a 6 foot span. I don't know.
Right, so it can handle pulling something bigger behind it.
Yeah, so he wanted something bigger, so I scaled it up, and then so not this past one, but the year before at Ceph, he brought it, didn't fly it, but he had already flown it at Edgewater, and so then he didn't want to take it home, and so he went and said to my son Obi, he said, "Hey, if I give this to you, will you fly it?" Sure. So we brought it home. So then I'm like, well, now I have to make something that'll tow it because I didn't have a tow plane. So that's why I made the super simple C-47.
Right. That's literally essentially a profiler. It's fantastic.
It's a profile scale plane, but I made that at the same relative scale as the blown up Waco. So that they looked right together.
And they do.
And the other thing that struck me when I finished, when I put them together, was just how big the Waco is. Because you look at it next to my simple C-47, and they're almost the same size. Like, I know the C-47 has like 100-foot wingspan, and Waco is like 80 or 84. It's huge, and the real C-47s would tow 2 of those,
or even 3,
or 3.
Jeez.
Routinely 2, but up to 3.
Yeah, routinely 2, but they had plans to be able to do 3. I'm like, what? we did a history segment on the Waco glider.
Oh, cool. Oh. Yeah, no, it was fun. He flew I flew the tow plane, the C-47. We tried first. Joshua was just there next to him, Orchard, and Obi flew it on the way up. But neither of us have any tow glider experience. So Obi was having trouble keeping it in the right relative orientation to the tow plane. So we ended up. I think he ended up too low, and so he pulled me down. And it's a testament to the power system I've got on the little thing. Is we ended up helicoptering together, where I was almost pulling him vertical. But it just
those are some pretty good sized motors on that.
Didn't have quite enough poop to pull it out, so we disconnected the string and recovered it and tried it again. So second and third time, Joshua flew the glider on the way up so that we got altitude. And then as soon as we got up there, he handed the controller to Obi, and he pulled the release switch, and Obi flew it all the way down.
Nice.
Really awesome. Yeah. That video came out pretty good too. So I really appreciated that.
That was cool.
Very cool. Okay. So that sounds like you were busy.
A bit, yes. In the midst of all the building too.
Well, so and what are you focused on building this past couple of weeks?
Mainly the next giant and another pseudo giant for Flight Fest.
Okay,
so, big stuff.
Well, okay, and we won't lose that because we're going to go straight into talking to Ben about the rest of what he knows. I don't know.
Do you want to talk about those specifically or just conceptually?
Well, I don't mind talking about them. I didn't want to mess up your guys' flow.
No, this is the flow that we've changed this so that now that we're talking about what you've done.
Okay.
Let's talk about that as much as you're interested in. We will come back to, because I want to know like what got you here, what got you in, how did you get interested in the hobby. I do want to talk about how you're getting your son in, and then your involvement with Flight Test a little bit, but mostly let's talk about what you're building. Let's start there.
More what I was asking was, were you okay to discuss what you're currently working on, or was it supposed to be top secret?
Ask my wife. I'm terrible at keeping secrets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then before we dive into that, I want just for a point of clarification, because we were talking about shuttles and Skylab and all that earlier. The shuttle program came online in, let me double check
80.
that date. Yeah, it was 81.
Late 70s or early 80s, and the
Yeah.
Skylab was 1974.
So Skylab wasn't on the shuttle program, but Space Lab was.
Okay,
So
he actually worked. So my grandfather, he worked on the Skylab first. He was on the team that developed the first space potty.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
that's impressive engineering.
his little claim to fame that he always talked about. And then one of the stories goes that my mom tells is that he brought home a scale model of his project, i.e., the space potty. Placed it on the dining room table very proudly, and Emma was not as pleased as he was.
I imagine not. So I just bring that up for clarification to make sure that anybody listening doesn't go like, oh, it wasn't until these dates. Make sure we got those
all good.
roughly right. So, but yeah, so talk about some of this big stuff you got going on and what goes into it.
So the current giant build that I'm doing is a A-26 Invader, which is another Douglas plane. I kind of wanted to stay in the Douglas family because that same grandfather, Al German, he worked for Douglas back in the day, and so I have an affinity for the back heritage, and so actually I didn't want to make another giant because after the C-47 I was really overwhelmed and kind of burnt out, and I was like, no more giants, I'm just done with that.
The C-47 was really beautiful though.
Oh yes, thank you. Yes,
and it flew beautifully.
I love flying it. It is a pain to set up because it just takes so much time, and it's huge, but it really is a joy to fly. But after that, and after taking it to Flight Fest, I was like, this is a huge endeavor. There's a lot more that goes into this than I expected. So I'm like, I think I'll just take a break. I won't go crazy on giants for a while. But Lee Krieger from Wingcatcher RC, who sponsored all the wire, all the carbon, and all the batteries on the C-47. So massive shout out to Wingcatcher RC.
And for full disclosure, has given Matthew the carbon fiber for the Monster Wonders, and has sent us both mugs and a box of tools.
Sweet. Yeah, he's been awesome and still is. So he reached out to me after the C-47 and was like, so what's the next big thing you're going to do? You want to make a quarter scale Waco that we can tow at next Flight Fest? And I'm like, hold on there, Bubba Louie. But so we got to talking, and he reminded me that he's got a CNC hot wire, and he's like, would it help if I hot wired some stuff? I was like, well, okay, yeah, that would take a lot of the burden off of me laying stuff out, wrapping foam around formers, which isn't hard, it's just more time consuming.
Right, then kind of having it already pre-cut, and you're just sort of jigsawing it together.
So that sent me down the rabbit hole of thinking, okay, what's the next thing I want to build? And then my other buddy, who wishes to remain anonymous, so he knows who he is the one who donated the motors for the C-47, got more and said, do you want more big motors? And I'm like, yeah. Your timing is impeccable. So I was going down the road of a giant YB-35 Northrop Flying Wing, but
Okay.
turns out I didn't have the right a match set of 4 motors, so I ditched that and went back to twins. And I wound up at the A26. I considered several other twins, but a lot of the other ones have been done.
Okay. So what pulled you to the Invader? 'Cause I'm looking at it, and before talking to you, I've never really heard about the plane much, and I love the way it looks.
Well, so what
It looks dangerous.
what pulled me to it? It was one, it's a twin. I that was sort of one of my criteria, and also I went down the road of like B26, Marauder, B25, Mitchell, and there was a couple others that I had thought about, but somehow or other the A26 got in the mix, and I started looking at it, and the difference, just the uniqueness of it. I haven't seen a lot of models of it out there, so I like doing stuff that not a lot of people have done. And also, it's a Douglas plane, so I can sort of have I can have 2 Douglas planes side by side, which I thought would be kind of cool. The scale of it.
Listen to this man. Look at the space he's got.
No, not side by side here. I mean, like on display.
Oh, okay.
No. When they're here, they're in pieces. Right now the C-47 is not. I know. I'm sorry. Right now the C-47 isn't even in the hangar right now. It's in the trailer because I need room to work.
Right. As I'm learning when I'm building the big noob, it's this right. It's a big wing, and I'm like, oh, it's cool. I can tilt it, and I'm like, wait, I need more room to fit it while I'm building it. I can't. Where do I put the built parts?
Yeah.
That's what I was learning pretty quickly.
I settled on it because actually also when I'm working out the size of things, I've already got the quarter scale giant C-47. I kind of wanted the next one to also be quarter scale so that if I ever had them out together, they would look right. And so as I'm sizing different things, I'm looking at, okay, what is the real size of this plane? What does that mean in quarter scale? And then also, can I fit it in the trailer with the C-47?
Can I find a way to pull it apart in a way that I can fit it where it needs to be? Yeah.
Oh, I actually did before I even modeled the airplane and figured out how to build it. I did a rough wireframe of it and I made a 3D model of my trailer interior, and because I've got the way I have the C-47 in there, and so I figured out, okay, yes, I can fit it in there. That was kind of actually the last requirement pass for me to say, okay, I'll do that one, because I knew I could fit them together in the trailer. Which is really a kind of benign reason, but
no, but I mean, that is in part why I chose the size I did for the scaling up the Wonder. Is like, okay, well, if we start cutting things in half in parts, how big is reasonable to be actually fit in the spaces we have to use?
Yeah. Well, and the other more technical reason for picking the A26 was it's a fairly simple fuselage cross section. It could be simplified to a few more conical or constant sections, which work well with CNC hot wire. And also the wing and tails are dead simple. Like the B-25 has got a weird kind of pseudo gull wing thing going on. The tails aren't complicated. It's just a big H tail, but
right. Yeah, but H tails aren't really the easiest to build stiffly.
That's true. No, yeah, but
that's what I've noticed so far. It's like, well, I mean, it's not too hard, but if you want to make it so it's actually not going to start to wobble everywhere.
Yeah, there's just more joints. Yeah. No, there's a reason tails tend to be simple in what they are. So.
Yeah. No, that's
as I was saying before. The A26 is all Lee's fault.
Now, so he didn't suggest it, or he did suggest it, and you just kind of started crunching numbers and realizing it's the best.
No, he didn't suggest the airplane. He just suggested that he really wanted to be involved with doing another giant, and
Yeah, cool.
so he kind of talked me into it, and so I'm like, all right, we'll do this one, and then I went all in and really jumped down,
Yeah.
jumped off a cliff, and
How long ago did you start that?
Really? I only started it like January. I mean, early this year. I did not start it last year.
Okay.
It may have been February even. I probably started designing in January.
Okay.
I can look at some of my files and see when my first file saved.
What? I mean, that's the rough time frame for. If you're
definitely,
like, I guess our listeners who listen at home go like, "What in the world does it take?" Because I know your DC-3, or sorry, the C-47. That took a while. Like, I mean, you were planning that one out for a long time, and you were testing. You were learning a lot about the materials you were going to be using and things like that. Like, it took some time.
That one was over a year, and part of it was, a lot of learning along the way, figuring out, okay, how do I do this, but also getting motivated. Sometimes you just I just did not. There was a while during the C-47 where I just kind of sat and looked at stuff for weeks.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, I've got all the stuff here. Where do I start?
Right.
And then,
and where am I gonna? Where's my gotchas? Like, okay, I can envision the easy parts,
right?
But there's certain parts I've got to figure out now before I get to them, because if I get to them after the fact, I will have to take it all apart.
Yep.
And it will destroy most of what I'm doing. I might as well.
Big one on that C-47 was the wing join, wing to fuselage join, which was kind of like a specter looming over me for most of the time I was working on everything else. I knew that I hadn't worked out the wing join yet. I had some ideas. I didn't like any of them.
Right.
And I was like, how in the world? And I don't know if this is maybe just part of how I tend to work. I've told people I'm really not a very good project manager, because I didn't really figure out the wing join on this one until both wings were almost done, and I was starting to work on the fuselage barrels. And finally, I could visualize, I could see, okay, I've got each wing has two wing spars, and I know I'm going to join them. Each wing spar has an upper and lower carbon tube, which is like a spar cap. So I knew that I was going to join the wings with telescoping carbon tubes across the center line.
Right.
And basically slide the two wing halves together.
Right.
From there, I wasn't sure how, and I knew that the fuselage has some formers. Wasn't sure how that was going to translate into wing attach. And so what I wound up with is actually something very, very old and scale, like true to full scale. There are 4 bolts in shear that connect the fuselage to the wing. And they're nylon bolts too, so that they are a design failure point.
So they basically go from the wing outside to the inside, or do they go inside to the out and you kind of screw them in and they kind of pull it in?
The bolt axis is fore aft.
Oh, okay.
The wing spars are coming in sideways, right? The wing spars are lateral. There's a fuse frame that comes in. There's 2 fuse frames. There's a forward one that comes in front of the front spar,
Okay.
And then there's another fuse frame that goes behind the rear spar.
Like a fuse former front and back of the spars.
Yeah, there's
Is that what you're
two
saying?
big fuselage bulkheads
Yeah. Gotcha.
in the main barrel section right over the wing. Front
Mm-hmm.
one goes in front of the front spar, the rear one goes behind the rear spar. They basically sandwich those two spars. And then the 4 bolts, there's 2 in the front and 2 in the back.
And they just tie it all together.
That's it. That's all that holds the wing to the fuselage.
Simplicity has beauty to it.
Yeah, and I remembered some old stories that my dad had told me. I think it was a B-29. Also has basically 4 massive bolts joins the wing structure to the fuselage structure. In a not quite the same, but in a similar fashion.
No. Yeah, it's probably not a whole lot different. And yeah.
When you
Why
get
didn't I
into
talk to
really...
you like a month ago? No worries.
No, you're good.
Oh, when you really get into structure design, I've learned so much from people that, I mean, simplicity, like load paths are like water. They always follow the path of least resistance.
Always.
It's not always where you want it to go.
It's the stiffest first.
Yeah.
Whatever gives the least is where it goes.
Yeah. Which is why you find so many full-scale structures that are designed with, like, why is there only 4 bolts? Because you know that that's where the load's going to go. Like, you design it specifically. If you put 100 bolts to hold a thing on, you don't know which one's going to fail first. You don't know where the load's going to go unless you've got supercomputers, which of course they didn't have in B-29 days. So you design it so that you know where the load is going to go, and you know how it's going to fail and when it's going to fail, and you just know what those loads are, and you can fly around it.
Right, because if you have an unintended load path, it means that thing that's taking all the pressure may not be designed for that pressure, and it will
exactly. And it's usually not.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's that's part of what I do in my daily job, and that's always interesting, just kind of rolling around in your head. Okay, this thing's gonna wiggle. And in an earthquake, it's gonna wiggle, and all that stuff that's wiggling is gonna be supported through the stiffest things. Where are they? And let's figure out where those are so we can, design that properly. Or should we stiffen up other parts so the load goes there instead of, where it's likely to go. So anyway, and it's interesting to think, because I don't think of planes that way in my head, even though I know they're the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's structures are structures are structures, whether it's on the ground, in the air, on water.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff. So
True.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to hear you talk about it. I appreciate you kind of getting into some of the details of that, because that is, it doesn't play a big role in, the lightweight 3-foot foamies, or the 6-foot, even the 5 or 6 foot foamies. But once you start getting past that point is where you really need to start at least looking at it.
It's true. It's not as crucial, on the smaller stuff, but I would encourage people, even if you are building, a 4, 5, 6 foot model, you should start to think about, building load paths, or analyzing load paths. And analyzing might be too lofty a word, but at least thinking about it and being smart about it, because something I found when I built B-52 at Flight Fest. For anyone that saw that, was a 14-foot all foam board.
It was awesome to behold as well.
All electric. Flight Test supplied all the electronics, and I built it on site. Backtrack. I didn't build it. Me and a bunch of people built it. It was a team effort.
Right.
I remember that project. That was Flight Fest 21?
No, I think it was 19.
Oh,
yeah, it was 19. It was
I'm thinking of a different project.
But before that, I made a 7-foot one at home, and both of them used only all foam board. I mean, I had carbon tubes again, just joining at the wing root, but
Right.
they did not extend out down the wing. There was no carbon down the wing. There was no carbon in the fuselage. The way I
Right.
got away with that is you only build structure where you need it. Because if you add more structure where you think you need it, you add weight. And as you add weight, you need more structure to hold onto that weight that you just added. And that is a downward spiral into the ground.
Right. Welcome to Aerodynamic Structures 101.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, and you can't always, I mean, this is why you have to think about it, tactically or strategically with whatever you're building, because with the buff, I knew that I'd have a ton of wire in the wing, and I'd have a bunch of motors out on the wing and speed controllers. So I knew I'd have a lot of weight. More than half of the structure, more than half of the weight of the airplane was going to be in the wings.
Yeah, which isn't common, right? Like if you've got your motor
right.
in the
it's
fuse,
not common for an RC plane, but it actually is kind of mimicking the real B-52. I mean, when it had payload, it's carrying it in the middle, but all the fuel and all the engines and all the systems are all in the wings.
Right.
The B-52 is it still is a very good performing airplane, even by today's standards, aerodynamically. It's insane.
But it was really cool to watch it. It didn't look like it took a lot of energy to keep up in the air and stay there. Like you probably could have taken that around for a while. It's what it looked like.
So, but excuse me, with that, with looking at the B-52 wing structure, the only one of the ways I was able to do that is because the wing was basically span loaded. So didn't need more than a foam spar to basically keep the upper and lower skins apart. Because all the stress is going through the upper and lower skins. It's the foam web isn't carrying any load. It's just a shear panel.
Right, it's transferring the load to the top skin.
Exactly. So that 14-foot B-52 only weighed 31 pounds with batteries and everything.
Yeah, wow. It seems like that's a lot, but I mean, at that size, it starts adding up quick.
Yeah. So, yeah, start thinking about it even when you're building medium big, and then it won't bite you when you get bigger.
Yeah, sounds about right. Geez, and that's the thing is like I think the first big, I'll call it big plane I remember you attempting was the XB-70.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's where it's, how did, and that's the other thing I always wanted to know. I'm just kind of curious because some of these guys, like you and some of the other guys I see on the forums, they're like, hey, I'm building this thing and I guess I'm sponsored and somebody's giving me all these motors to do this ridiculous thing I'm trying. It should be fun, right? Like obviously you've shown that you can put together a project well and you can document it well enough. And it obviously garners attention because it's attention grabbing. The size that you built that XB-70, that's basically the precursor to the Concorde, right?
In the real life, you mean the precursor?
Well, yeah, I mean the one that you were building was that's the model you're building, right?
So yeah, I built the XB-70 Valkyrie. It was 10.5 feet long, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that one's actually a really good contrast to talk about when we're talking about building light versus building stout. I did not think ahead very much about weight when I built the Valkyrie. And that, so for contrast, that was a 10.5 foot long model that weighed 27 pounds versus 14-foot span, 12-foot long B-52 only weighed like 6 pounds more.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were a lot smarter about where you're putting in your structure and your extra foam.
I went, now, not completely fair, like the Valkyrie model had retracts, it had 6 ducted fans, and it was only on 4-cell, so it was less efficient power.
Right.
That's what I had at the time.
Right.
But I didn't really think as strategically about weight on that one. It still flew, but only by the skin of my teeth. That was
right. But you did a good job of documenting the journey along the way, and kind of what you
thanks.
were doing, and what you're like, oh, that didn't work,
Yeah.
or oh, this is awesome. Look at this. I'm gonna do this for about an hour. I'm gonna show you a couple minutes of it, but I'll be here for an hour.
Yeah.
With the retracts up and down and up and down, which is always really satisfying when you're like, this part I did and I figured out and it's working.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep doing this until I'm happy. Was really cool, and then the fact that you stuck with it too, because if I remember in the Valkyrie, you have a fence at the very end of your landing strip.
Yeah. It ran the whole length of it's the guard fence, but it's the flight line fence on the runway. This is a runway out in Southern California at Corona, and or near Prado Dam, actually, not Corona, but it's little waist high chain link fence that runs the parallel to the runway, and the maiden flight of the first one, spoiler alert, it didn't even get off the ground. Nose wheel didn't even lift off.
No, it just kept rolling fast.
I went full throttle down the runway, and there was a slight crosswind, and I had my rudder rates on mid because I was worried about fishtailing down the runway. I did not have enough authority to counteract the crosswind, and the whole side of the fuselage forward of the wing is just a big flat plate for the it was a 5-knot crosswind, but all that surface area was getting wind blown on it, so my whole nose was just gently getting blown left, steering me left. I couldn't do anything. Or I could have chopped the throttle, hit the brakes.
Right.
I didn't. I was like,
but you thought,
go,
I'm guys, almost there. I can just pull up. There. It'll be great. Yeah.
I wasn't anywhere close to almost there. But so it went left, it went into the dirt, and then it went into the chain link fence, which effectively turned into a cheese grater for foam. And it just destroyed first one, which I had painted. I mean,
it was beautiful.
I was like, I looked like a ghost after painting that airplane. I didn't wear a bunny suit. Do not pay attention, don't learn from me. Wear covering and all that good jazz. But that was also the first project that I had ever been quote unquote sponsored for. I actually approached Josh Bixler and had a phone call with him where I basically pitched him my idea, like, hey, I want to build this crazy 10-foot Valkyrie, but I want to do it at a foam board, and so I want to showcase Flight Test and their materials. Would you willing to come alongside me? And he was in before I could finish my sentence. I mean, he was it was really cool. So Flight Test actually bought all the EDFs and speed controllers, most of the big ticket stuff they got. Did I say batteries? Yeah, they did batteries.
Okay. So I mean, they got the guts set out for you so that you could focus on building.
When I crashed it, I was like, oh man, how do I? And he was really cool about it. And so I was like, I'm not going to give up. I'll keep trying. So I built the second one. But I told him ahead of time, I was like, I'm not going to try and make it pretty. It's just going to be a Flight Test Valkyrie.
Right. Yeah.
And I did. And they actually sent me like a massive, like 4-foot Flight Test decal. Maybe not 4 feet. Maybe it was like 2.5 feet, but still
bigger than is reasonable.
Big enough.
A giant vinyl, so that I could plaster the wing, with Flight Test on it, and and that was actually kind of cool to have a thing that looked like a Valkyrie, but also looked like it was made out of cardboard, and then it's flying, and it's like, what?
So
yeah, that's really cool.
And then I crashed that one too. So
well, as with all things film board, it seems eventually you either push it because you want to see how much can I get away with, and eventually you go, oh, not that far, and then that might be the end of it. It's like,
don't go downwind on part throttle with a delta wing.
Good tip.
Thank you. We may need that later. Joe, are you writing this down?
Yep, got it.
Unless you have altitude.
Right. Yeah,
which where you have any of those things.
Right. No, but that was cool. That was what I remember following that project going, wow, this is a lot of fun to watch you try and get this, what looks like something that we've all kind of had in the back of our head, like, oh my gosh, it would be so incredible to pull this kind of plane together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, he's doing it. Holy cow, he's doing it. It's great. And then watch you hit it with the cheese grater. It's like, oh, no. Yeah. Oh. And you're like, I'll get it. I'll do it. And like, okay, cool. It was very exciting. I ended up actually making that chuck glider that you had done to test the CG.
Yeah.
And I made it for one of the STEM nights. So I made like 30 of those things.
I remember that.
And all the kids loved it. They were like, because that thing chucks so good. You just chuck it.
Yeah.
And it just goes.
Oh, yeah. Nice. They fly great.
Perfectly balanced. I remember
that too. That was a fun one.
I think what I really liked about that, I didn't need anything else. So when I finish up some of the other chuck gliders, as I'm like, the words are coming out of my mouth of like, hey guys, it's not quite balanced yet. You might want to hold off, or like, hey, don't forget the pennies. Like it's gone. That's already airborne.
Yeah, all the planes, they do tail stands and they do flips over themselves. Yeah.
And you're like, and it's like, well, if you put the weight in it, you might not have busted it right away. Like, anyway, but so what I liked about that was it essentially the way it was set up was the foam on the front was perfectly balanced with the foam on the back. So it was set to almost be naturalated CG.
As long as you used enough glue to glue the nose together.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, that's easy. That's easy enough to do. I think we did ours with tape, which was weird, but, and glue would have worked better. But again, I'm dealing with like 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds. So I'm like, okay, hot glue, maybe not the best thing to introduce. And I remember the first project that I remember kind of coming from your brain was your honorary Bugatti, the baby Bugatti.
Oh, yeah.
Which was Orchard was building this just stunning,
gorgeous Bugatti.
Blue Bugatti airplane that you're like, holy cow, is that a scale what is that,
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, we should
rotating propellers,
right, with all the things, all because it's in his style. He's putting all the rivets on it, all the rivets, all the details, all the stuff. And then you're sitting there like, well, I think we should all build one of these. Here's a really relatively simple build, right? And it was awesome. And you built it, and then you're like, I think after I built mine and crunched it into the ground pretty quick, because I didn't know how to fly anything, you're like, oh, here's one that's like 20% bigger, way better. And it handles so much easier. This is better. I'm like, oh, man. But yeah, that was the first one where I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a neat way to kind of pay homage to somebody who's really working on something that's way beyond our skill, but yet bring it available to us.
Did you hear the sort of behind the scenes about why that came to be, the baby Bugatti?
No, I didn't.
It's not really that behind the scenes, but I think he talked about it when they interviewed him at Flight Fest.
Mm-hmm.
He, Orchard, had been building his Bugatti, and in our sort of group chat on the side, he had kind of confessed, he had hit a wall, similar to where I was on C-47 sometimes, and even on this one now, once in a while. He had really just hit a wall and could not, it just was really lacking for, drive, inspiration, and so I saw him sort of lamenting that, and I was like, oh. So I thought, well, let's just make a simple one. So I didn't tell anyone. So I just made it, designed a little one sheet.
Mm-hmm. That's what I loved about it.
Yeah. And
So then I sent it to him before I sent it to anybody else, and he talks about this too, that he built it and it was able to distract him long enough and sort of just get his creative juices flowing again and get him, get the boulder rolling again.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that was the genesis of that little build.
Yeah, maybe not the intended consequence of it. I'm sure that's not what you were aiming for per se, but definitely it's an inspiration. Like, hey, look at what you're doing is inspiring others like me. That's awesome. So let's talk about, we talked a lot about where you were at with the A26. We're kind of going back down your history of builds. What actually, that's a good question. What started you doing the video log? Because it seems like that's what started a lot of this.
I started doing the vlogging thing, completely unrelated to RC stuff. It was just, I happened to see some of the other people getting, it started to become a thing that people did on YouTube, and I thought it was silly and funny. But then I kind of noticed, like, they didn't seem to be doing it. It didn't seem real to me. So I started, like, I'm going to do a vlog, and it's going to be completely raw and unedited, and just this is life, and I don't care if I'm popular or not. So most of them were my wife and I and our kittens, and sometimes our youth group kids, and just completely random, like usually 3 or 4 minutes, and I did it every day. It was a daily vlog. I literally did one every day for years. And then my son was born, and you can't do that. and and have a son. But I am thankful that I was doing it, because had I not been doing that, I would not have such a record of the day my son was born.
Right.
Which is an incredibly special moment. It's an incredibly special day, and so that's a whole other story. I could go into all kinds of stories, but yeah. So I'm grateful that I had been doing it, because I have that on record, and that's in a really special video to go back, and I share that every year on his birthday.
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
And so as I got more back into RC stuff, because I had done RC when I was younger, and I did sloping, mostly slope gliding.
Yeah.
As I got more back into it, as electric became more viable and everything, that just sort of became the thing that I wanted to record and share with people. So that I just kind of just put it all on one channel, because I didn't feel like publishing and getting complicated and making this channel for that or that channel for that. So I'm like, no, I'm just going to share stuff. This is me and my life. So
here it is. Right
here it is. So now my channel is still it's more almost all RC stuff now, but and because I've had the channel for so long, they've now allowed me to just make it like youtube.com/Ben Harber. So it's nice and easy to find and share. But the actual like official YouTube registered title for my channel is Ben Sucks at Vlogging.
Yep, I remember that.
And that's sucks with an X.
Yep.
The old school. Old school sucks.
Go way back. Well, so that reminds. So okay, so your son was born. Obviously, an incredible day in any person's life, and I noticed that as you started delving back into the planes, you started making the videos. What I do want to talk about, where did you start? Like, how did you get back into it? Did you go back into slope soaring? And then what brought you around to, you said the electric was getting obviously a more reasonably viable solution
Yeah.
to be able to
So
put in there.
briefly, I'll just say, what took me out of it was I crashed a gas-powered stick 40 trainer, and I didn't want to put toothpicks back together. So that kind of dampened the entry to it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I had been having a lot of fun doing sloping and foam stuff, styrofoam, packing tape covered and all stuff. And then also school and work and other priorities. I put in way too much money to my first truck and working on cars and things. So what brought me back to it was actually kind of 3D printing and some design stuff that I'd like to do on my own, where I was and I somehow came across the video of David Vindestall doing RC to space and back, or FPV to space and back.
Yeah.
And at the time he was
put
FPV,
FPV on a weather balloon, right?
Yeah. Well, and then on a little RC, it was a fun jet, I think, that he had made into a glider.
Yeah.
So, and at the time he was working with flight tests. And so on the suggested videos on YouTube showed flight test. And so I found flight test and I was like, oh, hey, I can do RC with like foam board, hot glue, and electric. I'm all over that.
Mm-hmm. That sounds way easier and less painful in the long run.
Yeah. I got into it. They definitely were a vehicle to re-entry into the hobby for me, and because it made it easy. It made it stupid easy, and of course I went crazy on 3D printing and other things. I was playing with shapeways and other stuff even before I had printers, or a printer. But the foam board thing really captured me, and so I started designing stuff because it's also what I do for a day job. So I've been doing CAD for, since I was in school, and so I do CAD all day at work.
If you don't mind me asking, what kind of CAD? Like 3D modeling, 2D?
3D modeling, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at work, they've got all, high-end fancy schmancy stuff, but I found some stuff that I could work. This is before Fusion and all that, so I found some stuff I could work with.
Autodesk Inventor is somebody's salary, if you have to buy it.
Yeah. So that was, doing foam board and designing my own stuff, and or even, copying real stuff. That the first one that I really had a lot of fun with was I designed the EDF A4 Skyhawk, and so that one kind of really got me rolling on the jet thing.
Yeah, I noticed you're. It's funny. We're talking. I was talking to Brian Rara earlier.
Yeah,
he was like, "What history could I help you with?" He's like, "Maybe the A4. That would be good." He literally was asking about it, and I'm like,
"Yeah."
I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds good." I don't know if that's what we need tonight, but we'll see. So maybe we'll learn about that next couple weeks.
I dug a lot into you can definitely have me back to talk A4. I dug a lot into the design history of the A4 when I designed that model.
Okay. We'll hold you to that, Ben.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Nice. Yeah. No, so that's one of the things that I learned. One of the first things I learned at some of the challenges on the flight test forum is that if you take a moment and learn the history of the plane, it changes how much you enjoy the building of the silly foam plane you're building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in your case, the giant version of the foam, but you can appreciate
it's still silly.
What it took. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But, it gives a greater appreciation to where it sits in history, what it is you were doing, and maybe some of the decisions that they make, especially when you start flying it and you go, oh, I see what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty neat. So you started with the A4, but you went through jet after jet after jet. What is it that pulls you to jets?
I think it was, again, that not a lot of people were doing them, especially in foam board. There was lots of other jets, and there's foamy jets, ARF jets, and then obviously there's turbines and all that crazy stuff. But there wasn't any foam board jet stuff out there. I mean, and EDFs were a thing, so they weren't super popular. There wasn't a lot of them, but they were there and affordable-ish, enough. I mean, a 4-cell EDF wasn't, like, I don't know, $35-$40.
Yeah, it was reasonable enough.
Yeah. So, and also I like not, having a propeller to cut my fingers on, and designing around basically just a thrust tube is really pretty simple. Because you don't have to worry about torque. You don't have to worry about a lot of other, crap with propellers. And so I just went whole hog and went down the jet route. So I did the A4 Skyhawk, and then I think the next one was a F5 Tiger Shark, and then F4 Phantom 2.
I remember that one.
I should remember. What else did I do?
The YF-23.
I did a YF-23. That was actually pretty recent.
It was, but
it
stuck out. I was like, oh yeah, that's so good.
I completely forgot. I skipped over the F-16.
Oh right.
I did the F-16 right after the A4, and they fly on the same power plant. Yeah, and the F-16 is one of my favorite ones I've ever done, because the A4, when I first flew it, I had the ailerons reversed. And
oh no.
that hurts. Just to hear that statement.
I got
both of us went, oh.
I got so lucky. I hand launched it. It flew out of my hand. I went to roll it. It rolled backwards, and I continued the roll, stopped it, and landed it back on its belly.
Yeah. You lucky dog.
And I ran over there, and so I reversed the ailerons, and I flew it, and it was fine. So lucky.
Wow.
But besides that, I learned a lot through, failure and bumps and bruises on the A4. The F-16 maiden flight, the maiden toss of the F-16, it flew out of my hands, and it didn't need a click of trim. And I was like,
wow.
What? But even as it flew, it was almost at the same time I had the simultaneous thought, like, well, that's nice, but what if that's what happened when I first flew my A4? How little would I have learned?
Right.
Like, I was almost more thankful for all of the crud that I had to go through with the A4 than for the F-16 that just sailed out of my hands and basically flew hands off.
Right.
So no one enjoys, I mean, even I don't enjoy crashing a plane, but I value it more.
Yeah.
Than one that has no issues.
Right, because it's not memorable. It doesn't have as much blood, sweat, and tears. The struggle to victory yeet ratio is way different. Where you're like, I did it, yes. I feel like I had that kind of deal with these the flying car. I ended up designing a flying car, and I was like, there's no way this is going to work. And I didn't have too much trials, but there were some things. It took a little bit, and it was a weird bird to put together. And then I got it, and then it went up, and it flew great. And I was like, holy cow, got it down in one piece. I was like, oh my God, this is not like all the others. The other one's just crashing into the fences.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions that people ask me is, how often, what do they say? They say, how many planes have you crashed?
Yes.
And I say, all of them.
Right. Yeah, and that's what people are like, oh my God, you guys, can you just not know how to fly? I'm like, no, you fly them. And they go, okay, cool, this flies great.
Yeah.
How much?
Yeah, let me try something.
What if I like do a little bit more here, and let me push this one a little bit harder, and if I just crank it,
Yeah.
what's it going to do, right? And then you go do
Right.
it, and then sometimes that's the end of it.
We all know the famous last words, just one more flight. But there's also the other famous last words. Well, what if I try this?
Mm-hmm. That's usually my famous last words. Definitely.
Or let me try something.
Wasn't it? Joe and I were out at the field flying the Noob Wonder, which, by the way, I've flown the Wonder. The Wonders fly awesome. The Noob Wonder flies somehow a little better, and I don't even get it. Maybe it's the tail fins.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough vertical plates that serve for helping it track, I guess.
It's just
having turned the 6-axis off. That is not a plane great for somebody out of practice.
That's for sure. So we were out there and we were flying it, and Joe was trying it for the first time, and he's like, "Do you think we should try another battery? Do you think we got maybe one more?" I'm like, "Joe, you just said the magic words. We have to stop now."
Yes.
I'm like, if we go up now, we will lose this plane. It will be fun. It'll be spectacular. With any luck, we'll get it on video. So it won't be a loss, but I want to keep this one a little longer. So we'll have to put it away now.
Discretion is the better part of valor.
Yeah. I'm like, this goes against everything I believe right now, but I think we should.
So that, I have one caveat to my, all of them answer, and that is the C-47. And although I have had some rough landings, or rough-ish, that is only still around because I listen to that voice way more when I'm flying that plane.
Now, why do you think that is? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh,
there's more blood, sweat, and tears in it, or
I'm just more aware of the scale of I guess what's at stake, with that airplane. It's because I have that moment with all my planes when I'm trying something. It's like, should I try this? It's fine, I'll try it. And then, more often than not, it ends in a crash, and you learn something and you move on. But with the C-47, I guess I take a few extra moments of pause, and it's like, okay, I could, but I don't have a great feeling about it, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
And I'm just and with that plane, I'm okay with not risking it. Like I wanted to take it to Ceph and either show it off, but also maybe get permission to fly. If there was a inspector there that could sign it off, so I could fly at the AMA event.
Now, is that because it's over 55 pounds? It has to go through a whole extra.
They actually have two levels. It's called the large model aircraft program within the AMA. There's LMA1, which is between 55 and 77 pounds, and then LMA2, which is 77 to 125. There's some fractions in there. It's like 77.5 or something like that, but it's roughly. So I'm actually in the LMA2 category, which if you're LMA1, you can quote unquote self-certify. You can fill out the paperwork and just say Scout's honor, I did all the math right, and here's my application to be LMA1, and then you can go fly. LMA2. And
I've inspected this fully. Yeah, I've done the inspection checklist before the profiling.
Right. Yeah, the checklist. You fill it out and then you submit it, and you actually don't even have to wait for them to approve it before your maiden checkout flight, but you just got to fill out all the stuff.
Okay.
So, but LMA2, you have to have an LMA inspector actually check it out and witness your check ride flight, essentially. There aren't any super close by, and I'm still trying to get that sorted out. But on the topic, of the C-47, I could have just put it in the trailer and took it with me, but combination of I don't know if there's going to be an inspector, and I don't know how good the weather's going to be, and it's just risking damage to the plane. It's not worth it. So I just didn't take it. I just left it home, and it was kind of a bummer, but that freed up the rest of my headspace and the week there to just have fun with my son, and enjoy flying what we had. And it actually worked out well too, because we did get rain one day, and so we were able to just close up the trailer and hang out in the trailer. And we actually slept in the trailer one night.
Yeah.
So
like its own little camper.
We couldn't have done that if it was full of C-47.
Yeah, right. Does that pretty much take up the full trailer?
Yeah. You can walk around it, but it's a delicate operation.
Okay, it's like it's nooks and crannies. It's not big giant, walkways or whatever.
No.
Okay. Let's see. So how did you get involved really with the flight test community? Because I know like you were doing stuff, and obviously you were part of the forums. I saw you and me were amongst a ton of other people, just going hog wild, having a blast with what else can we do with this?
So yeah, I got doing the foam board jets was kind of my entry to sharing stuff on the forums.
Okay.
And I think it was anyway. I have to look back in the history.
It's been a while.
But the first, and I was following along, following Flight Fest when they did the sort of unofficial first one in 2014, and then the first big one in 2015. And then I almost on a joke said, hey, we should go next year to my wife. And she said, yeah. And I was like, wait, what? Okay, we're gonna plan it. We're gonna go.
I'm writing up a contract now. You need to sign this before you do it.
Yeah. So we went, three of us, my wife and I, and our 3-year-old son at the time, which I don't recommend to everyone to take a 3-year-old to Flight Fest.
Yes.
Unless you know what you're getting. I mean, 3-year-olds can have fun at Flight Fest. I'll say that in general, but just know what you're getting into. Don't try and fly all the things and build all the things if you have a 3-year-old. You need to balance it, and I didn't have the best balance, so I learned some things that were not plane related that year, and that was good.
Yeah.
But it was still that. So that's kind of how I got hooked up with a lot of people, or I started meeting people going to Flight Fest.
Yeah.
I participated in the world record flight where we did the 100 and some odd. Actually, I've got the certificate right here on my wall. 179 was the official record number. And then we also did the Gotha Gaggle, and that's where I met Joshua Orchard for the first time. And Rasterize, Steve Rosema. And a bunch of other guys, Spawns and Mike Finley and Pat, all those guys.
Yeah, all the good folk.
Yeah.
Yeah, good peoples.
That's kind of the genesis of that.
Nice. Now I know you also have official release is the FT Commuter. I keep looking at. I don't know why I haven't built it yet. I think I've pulled it out and almost built it 3 different times. It looks like a really sturdy trainer plane.
I never used it as a trainer. It certainly is. It is a very sturdy build.
It's built after the Cessna 182, is it?
No, it's the Cessna 150.
150.
Right. 150M was the commuter model. And I'm only being specific about that because that was the plane that my grandpa Al had.
Yeah.
When he started teaching me to fly when I was like, I don't know, 8. He would take me up with him, and I'd sit on a phone book, and he duct taped 2x4s to the rudder pedals so that I could feel what he was doing and reach everything.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I made that in his honor, and Yeah, it is a pretty solid little plane.
Yeah,
especially for its size.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean when I was looking at like how it's constructed. I'm like, wow, that's all those little angles really make a big difference in how solid it's going to be.
They really do. I've cartwheeled that plane the first few that I built. I was pretty rough on it, and it still kept flying. It's pretty amazing. Again, build light, and then there's not enough mass in its own self to hurt it.
Yeah, definitely.
I still have one. Also, I have a kit that I haven't built, and I want to try and put a little 1106 micro quad motor on it. Because I think it's light enough that it would fly on a little 1106 on like 2 or 3 cell.
With like a 3-inch prop or 4-inch prop.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that.
Okay, all right.
Because that would be fun to see. Even lighter.
I know, right? That'd be crazy. And you're using where the heck? I have one of these little 450 single cell or 2 of these.
Oh, cool.
Hooked together. These this is what I'm looking for. This little 2-cell jobber over here.
Yeah.
That'd be enough to get it out there. Sweet. So which one of these, and I know this isn't fair, but which one of these is your favorite at the moment?
Which one of
all the designs you've done, all your babies?
Oh,
is there a favorite? You can have a runner-up. It's not meant to take forever. I was just curious if you had one that stood out.
For fun flying, I didn't mention this one in the jet lineup, but I did an F-18 Super Hornet of my own design. But this was before Overstreet did his that became the Master Series, which is also a great Super Hornet design. But of mine, I like my Super Hornet because similar to John's, it's very floaty, deceptively so for its size, and it is also incredibly maneuverable. And when I designed mine, I simplified it to be just Elevon controls on the tails. So I've got all moving stabilator tails with no ailerons or anything on the wing. So it's only a 2-servo jet with twin 70mm fans, and it is light and it's fun. And you can throw it around the sky, and you can go fast. And it was that one. That's
how
fun.
do I find that on the forums? Is it anywhere?
It's on resources. Yeah, it's under my name.
All right. I have a certain lady friend who wanted to be a fighter pilot when she was younger. Her hearing kept her from definitely doing that. But she loves the Super Hornet. Loves the Super Hornet. So
I think it's in one of the. There's a video of the maiden. I maidened it out in the desert of Palm Springs. We were visiting my wife's mom at the time, and we flew it out there. And I made this one low pass, and I don't know if I caught a rotor or wind or if it was a twitch of my thumb, but it went into the rocks hard. And my son crawled down over the lip of the hill to pick it up, and he comes up with this just pile of airplane and just plops it on the ground very unceremoniously. And it's the best. It's one of the funniest moments I've ever recorded on video.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I remember that. I remember watching it.
So that's in the build thread somewhere, I'm sure. But I mean, as far as favorite, just top, I gotta say C-47 for now. We'll see after I fly the A-26 if that takes the spot. But flying something so massive that just doesn't, it shouldn't fly the way it does from what it looks like, right? So I'm just very thankful that everything came together, and I'm just, it's just a kind of a joy to fly and share with people and see the smiles and all the oohs and ahs. It's fun.
It's something to watch. Again, if you're bringing it out to Flight Fest again and going to fly it, That is certainly
Definitely.
if
Yep.
you are going to be there. So for our listeners who are going to be there, pay attention to when that's going to fly, because that is something really incredible to watch.
Yeah, the
Maybe you can
C-47
get
is definitely coming. If I finish the A-26 in time, which I'm crossing all my fingers and toes and pushing hard to finish it, that will also be there. And if it's there, and I can swindle another pilot, maybe Jason or David, I would love to fly them both at the same time.
That's a lot of trust you're putting in somebody.
Yeah. Well, I know Jason has giant scale experience, and so does David.
Yeah. Quick question for you.
Yeah.
How big would the Waco glider wingspan be?
At quarter scale?
Yeah.
Roughly.
Say if a whole community were to come together and build a giant Waco glider.
Roughly, like, not that much smaller, like 21 feet, 20 or 21 foot wingspan.
21 feet would be really hard to pull off at Flight Fest. I mean, obviously not insurmountable. Obviously Peter did it, but.
Oh yeah, no, it's eminently doable, especially since it's a really simple design.
It really is. It's a giant box.
Yeah.
A beautiful, wonderful, simple box. Okay, XF-18 Super Hornet twin 70mm EDF.
Yep.
I see it here. I'm going to put it on my thing. Oh, there we go. Okay. I know somebody who's going to be excited if we end up building it. Okay, very good. Very important. All right. Sorry to interrupt the show with that, but
good job.
Yeah, I'm glad I could help out. Okay, so you were also talking about how at CEF, and you've been doing this for a while now. Your son has been part of your journey through re-entry on out. And he's obviously now starting to get the hands-on experience of the bug.
Yeah.
Especially evident by what he's bringing to Flight Fest. So what is your method? What do you've been using to teach him? What have you found to be successful? Obviously every kid's different, but what are the things you think are always like, hey, these worked, and they seem to work for most people? Or what would you do and what would you not do if you had to do it over?
Obviously sims are a great tool, a great help if you're wanting to get into the RC side of it. They're a great practice tool. But really letting them get their hands dirty on stuff, starting with chuck lighters and even paper. I mean, even before that, just paper airplanes. Start folding paper airplanes, because right there you can, their imagination can just run away, and you can show them a simple dart, and you can show them other, ways of making a paper airplane, and then their brain can go off and try and fold something different, and then they start to realize that something that they think looks cool isn't going to fly or doesn't fly, and then they're like, well, why doesn't this work? And that question is the open door to learning, when they say, why didn't this work? Because one, they're asking the right question, and it's coming from them, and then you're just answering the question. You're just answering the query. You're not trying to say, all right, we're going to sit down and I'm going to teach you about Bernoulli and Newton and all these laws of this and that and the other. Because I mean, that might be interesting to some people, but even I'll get bored with that sometimes. So if it comes from a question that they're asking, they're already engaged. You don't have to manufacture that. So
yeah, definitely.
So think about, I would think about it in terms of, how can I orchestrate situations where they ask questions?
Okay.
So, and like I have been saying, with Obi hanging out with me in the hangar, trying to let him explore his own creativity of, I want to create this thing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. So let's see. What would you say that you've tried that wasn't as successful as you thought it would be?
Teaching him CAD the way I do CAD. The program I use on my computer it works for me, but it's not a great one to really teach and learn on. So I downloaded Fusion on our family computer, and I made the mistake of not sitting down first and learning it myself. So I couldn't really teach him. And I'm like, well, it looks all nice and shiny, and here's all the buttons, but we don't really know what they do. And that didn't quite work the way I thought it would. But he's gotten more into it himself, and we've found some tutorials, and he's getting into it.
Definitely. Yeah. And that is a difficult thing. The things you think will work versus what actually seems to go, oh, that actually worked. Okay. I didn't expect that. All right.
Did you mean in terms of like teaching ideas or actual projects?
I was thinking either teaching ideas. I was thinking like how to get kids success in, there's a couple things I thought would work, and it's like, well, that didn't work. Some things worked well, but I wasn't using a method that was good for me. I have like you running around all the time. I didn't set myself up for success, as in like having everything ready. So that when I get out to the field, it'd be like, okay, well, I do like I normally do when it's just me, which is spending time getting everything pulled together. In the meantime, the kids are like, oh, this is boring. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. No,
and it's like, no, I should have set it up for like literally we're going to plug this in here, double check that it's going the right direction, and let's start flying. And it's like,
in that vein, things like overestimating how simple something is, based on either someone else's recommendation or my own experience with it, which is skewed, or, in my own, overestimation, or, I think the world of my son. So I think, well, sure, he can handle this. And I really shouldn't have given him, that thing first. You really do need to start with like those 2-channel, like the Easy Pack. The Easy Packs are awesome.
Yeah.
Because you can build a chuck glider, and then you can just throw it, balance it, and then you can throw power on it, and then experiment with 2 degrees of freedom on control.
Right.
And and you can get used to reverse orientation. Where left is right and right is left.
And you're already building some basics like, okay, this is you control height with throttle, you control left and right and keeping it near you with the ailerons. And then, you get the orientation and the left-right flip. And then that's half the battle. Those are the battles that will definitely tank a plane every single time, right?
Yeah.
And getting those as a core in the Easy Glider help a lot.
Yeah, and that's the part where like the sim is good, but it doesn't have your brain knows that it's not real. So you'll try stuff that you normally wouldn't. Or if you're not trying stuff that you normally wouldn't, your stress level is lower because you subconsciously know it's not real and there's nothing at stake.
Right.
So you're a better pilot in the sim because you're just by nature your stress is lower, and you're better at almost everything when your stress is lower.
Right.
And so
wait, what?
when you when you see those people, I thought we were talking about this earlier, where you're like, oh, you can do it in the sim. Why'd you freak out in real life? Well, because it was real life, and I got a real plane coming at me. And, that real plane went the opposite direction I expected it to, and I freaked out, man.
Yeah. That's just that, but like someone was like, that plane represents 40 hours of my life floating through the air now. Like I spent a lot of time and effort getting it to that point.
Yeah, even if you're not thinking it in those terms, hours of work or whatever, if it's someone else's plane, you still subconsciously you're going to look at and think and realize this is real. If I mess up, real damage happens.
Yeah.
It's not just hit reset and start over.
Reset. There is no reset button. It's called a plastic bag.
The sim is helpful, but really the value in just learning from your mistakes is just invaluable. So,
yeah,
letting kids try and fail, and then work through the failure and get back on the horse, and keep getting back on the horse. Is really the biggest thing.
Teaching them to be stupidly perseverant, or to be an engineer,
or both.
Or both. I know, right? Oh, okay. Well, good. Those are excellent. Right. Don't give up. Even if it looks bad, you learned a lot.
Yeah. So I got to say, one of my favorite quotes of all time was from one of my dad's first pastors. His name's Dr. Ed Cole. He wrote lots of stuff, gave lots of speeches. One of the things that he said was, champions are not those who never fail, but those who never quit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always stuck with me. It stuck with me since I was my son's age, because, and when I first heard it, I thought, oh, that sounds nice. As I heard it more, and I thought about it more over the years, it stuck with me, because the more you dig into that, you look at champions, like Olympians. That's who I really think about when I hear this quote. Right. When I think about it, I think of an Olympic gold medalist. How did they get a gold medal? They didn't get a gold medal because they never did anything wrong. Like, they got the gold medal because they never stopped trying. Right? How many gold medalists do you read about that are they go to the Olympics for the first time and they medal in their first tryout? Like, no, the guy or girl or gal who's got that gold medal probably have a bunch of fourth and bronzes and silvers on the way to that gold.
Yeah, definitely.
So, don't quit.
That's good advice. You need to put that on a plaque or on a shirt. And then a picture of a broken plane, and on the back, the plane fixed.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Joe, wait, quick, we need to put that merchandise together. Anyway, I'm kidding. We're, but it's really good advice to end on. I appreciate that. But we have been going on for a while, and when we still haven't done our lightning round with you. We have a little silly thing that we do. It's a small handful of questions that we give after we've exhausted our guests. We like to get it so they're almost delirious, and then we can give them this lightning round. The goal of this is to give a series of, or we're going to give you this or that kind of questions, and you spit the first thing that comes to your mind. It's quick, fast kind of deal. Don't worry about it.
I'll do my best not to overthink it.
We're only recording it. I promise. It'll be great. So with that, I guess I'm going to start it with sit or stand.
Stand.
Pinch or thumb.
Pinch.
OpenTX, Spectrum, or other.
OpenTX.
Micro, park, or giant scale.
Giant.
Fast or slow.
Slow.
Snow, water, pavement, or tall grass.
Pavement.
I like that. P26 or P47?
Wait, P26 or P47?
P, Papa. Papa's 26 or Papa 47?
Oh, gosh, for what? For fun or for lulz?
Your choice.
Okay, P26.
Okay.
P
you
shooter.
prefer to build or fly?
Build.
Do you like the older stuff or the newer stuff?
Older stuff.
3 cell, 4 cell, 6 cell, 10 cell, 12 cell.
All the cells.
Foam or balsa?
Foam.
Axis or allies?
Allies.
Landing gear or belly land?
Belly land.
And the last and probably most important question we have, creamy or chunky?
Say again?
Creamy or chunky?
Chunky.
Does it change if there's fluff?
No.
Excellent.
Good job. Thank you, sir.
Well done, sir. Well
Ooh,
done.
Mr. Mike.
Woo! You made it through the lightning round.
See,
Yeah.
that wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it wasn't
That
so
was
bad.
fun. That's a good one.
Yeah, you never know quite where the answers come. Sometimes they go all over the place, but it's always fun to hear what you're thinking. Now, we have a history, but I think we've run out of time. We will get to the C-47 Commando. I chose that one because we were
C-46.
talking. Sorry,
C-46.
C-46. What did I say? 7?
C-47, yeah.
Yeah.
What the heck's wrong with me? Oh my, it's too late. Anyway, the Curtis C-46 Commando. I chose this in part. Well, we were going through a bunch of different numbers. I was looking at them. This was an interesting. I love the oddities, and this plane is a bit of an oddity in its own way, which we'll get into.
Yep.
But you have a connection to this a little bit. Do you mind talking about it briefly, and then
Yeah.
we'll play it again right before we get into, or we'll talk about it briefly. But if you don't mind talking about it, your connection with this plane.
I'll be brief with it. So my other grandfather, my dad's dad, Richard Harber, he was a crew chief in World War II on originally C-47s, and his squadron, their whole group, him and several other squadrons were training, doing glider tow training in the lead up to D-Day. And unknown to me or anyone else why, him and his squadron at the last minute got switched to C-46s, which were assigned to flying the China-Burma-India theater, flying resupply missions.
Right.
And so he never flew in D-Day and instead flew C-46s. And I am incredibly thankful to the good Lord for taking him off of that flight path. But he always hated the C-46 because he said it was a big, slow pig. It was underpowered and fat and ugly. He hated him. He still, to this day, he just turned 98 a few weeks ago, and he still will tell you how much he hated that C-46 and how much he loved working on the 47s.
Well, a lot of men who flew them, they called them the whale or the flying coffin.
Yeah.
So there's a whole, we'll get into some of the details, but yeah, that route was pretty interesting but it started off in India and it would go over the Himalayas, up to, I guess, Burmese and China and drop off supplies. So it kind of go back and forth. And it's one of the few planes that can really handle that altitude gain and that kind of rugged, the rugged weather that is in that area. Most of the other ones really didn't handle it too well. So that's why they were that's where it really felt like it had its niche.
Gotcha.
And we'll get into that, but it's pretty neat. And yeah, and it seems like a lot of the pilots weren't, I mean, they appreciated it for what it could do and what it did. And it did it well, but it wasn't.
They appreciated it, but they didn't really like it.
Right. They didn't really, it wasn't necessarily their favorite plane in the world, but it did have quite a little niche in its role in the war. We'll talk about that next time. So Ben, if you don't mind, you can tune in and hear about it. As everybody else will. Probably the one we record right before, it might be in a week or less, a week or 2 weeks or whatever, trying to get something out and together before we head to Flight Fest. So if everybody tunes in for that. I know, right?
Yeah,
what is that? Less than a month?
Yep.
Oh my God.
I
have a whole supersized noob to build. I'm almost done with one. I still have to build a second.
Well, hopefully the second one will go faster now that you've figured out a lot of stuff with the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, I'm spending probably half my time trying to figure out the little, like, how am I going to do that? How's that going to latch? Is that going to be strong enough? You know, like I want to make sure that I can take it apart, but if I do that, am I compromising its structural capacity? Is it going to fall to pieces in mid-flight? I don't want that. So
more tape.
I don't think tape fixes what I'm trying to do.
I'm trying to have tape.
Maybe I'm not. I'm not using tape in the right locations. Maybe I think that's it. Yeah. But anyway,
alrighty.
With that, seriously, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today and having a conversations. I've really loved talking to you about all the things. I know we need to have you back on, probably talk about all the other things that we missed.
I'd love it. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on and spending so much time with us, Ben.
And
thanks for your patience. Thank you for your patience in the difficulties we've had tonight.
Thank you. It was my tech that was crapping out. So.
That's okay. The listeners won't know about it. They'll just hear a little weird chime and it'll all be fine.
The magic of editing. Before we get out of here, we kind of skipped over to community highlights earlier as we were trying to restructure. So we do have a build night coming up this Friday, which will have happened by the time this episode goes live. But more importantly, what I want to point out is that we've had some merch for a little while. We just don't talk about it a whole lot. But leading up to Flight Fest for the Noob Wonder Jumble, this, that crazy name. We have t-shirts available on our Spring Tea shop. We'll have a link down in the description that'll take you straight to it, but it's got the full name of the event, comical as it is, although I think the comedy of part of that name got lost on a lot of people, so sorry about that. But also a simplistic logo that fills up the back of the shirt that shows off the outline of the Noob Wonder. It's just an interesting design, but that will be available, and I would encourage you, anybody who's listening to this that is going to be part of that event, to go ahead and get those ordered if you're wanting one, because shipping times, I don't know exactly how fast they can get them, so it's better to go ahead and just get it ordered if you're planning to get them.
Yeah, I think mine said it'd be out to me within less than a week, which is pretty excellent. So I think that's awesome. But yeah, take a look. Ben, I don't know if you have a Wonder sitting in your back pocket. Obviously, your son does. He's got one hanging up. What scale is that he's working on? Is it 150%?
I don't even know what the scale is. I think it's 5 foot span.
Okay, so that's about a 200% scale.
Yeah, it's big, and it's not perfectly scaled in all dimensions, but it's pretty close.
No, it'll be interesting. You won't be able to miss it when he puts it up in the sky for sure.
Oh no, you won't.
Well, if you want to order him a t-shirt, because we have now officially put on the calendar at Flight Fest, we have 3 Wonder Jumble fly-ins, which basically bring your Wonder and join us and fly in there. It's, I think, between, 1 and 1:30, or is it 1:30 and 2?
I think it's 1 and 1:30.
On Thursday, Friday.
Between 1 and 1:30.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just enough time that if you crashed it, and I'm starting to realize, like, as everybody's putting the pictures of their builds online, we're going to have a lot of really similar looking planes up in there.
Don't blink.
Which I'm really excited that people are enjoying the designs that we've got out there. So that's awesome. But yeah, if you're doing that, go see if you can find a shirt. Just bring out your Wonder, have fun. We're just gonna have a ridiculous amount of these things in the air. It's gonna be
sounds great.
So
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing just how many show up, and we're just gonna have to grab some people from standing around. Like last year, Matt and I were talking about it. We like the Spitfire fly-in. We were kind of spotting each other, so not everybody was up in the air at one time. I think this year we're just gonna see if we can. Hey, who wants to spot for the flyer so we can get everybody up there?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, listen, we'll drag this on all night. Ben, thank you again so much. And be sure to give us links to your various socials or project pages. So we can include those down in the show notes below. Is there anything in particular that we haven't covered that you maybe wanted to plug as a last minute insert?
I guess just, I'm mostly active on YouTube, youtube.com/Ben Harber. And I don't talk about it a lot, but I do have a Patreon, and there's links to that on my YouTube channel as well.
Excellent.
Nice.
Good.
Very good. Well, speaking of Patreons, we want to thank ours and yours, but especially ours for helping keep the lights on. And Matt, if there's nothing else, if we pretty much covered everything, I can do the outro.
Yeah, go do the outro.
Okay.
And there's nothing by me other than thanks again, Ben. This has been a joy. I can't wait.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
I can't wait to see you again at Flight Fest.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him there. All right, guys, as always, we thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we've enjoyed having the conversations, being able to sit down with Mr. Ben Harber, who was very gracious to spend his time with us. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything related or unrelated, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com, or you can reach Matthew at aviationrcnoob.com, or you can reach me, Joe, at aviationrcnoob.com. There we go.
That's where the complaints go.
Oh, yeah. Feel free to swing by our Facebook page, and we do have a Facebook group, I think, now. We've made that change a while back, so it's a little easier to see what's going on and interact with. And if you're not a member of the Discord, feel free to follow the link in the description for a link to join the Discord community, where these conversations continue and take on a life of their own, and they're all over the place and sharing pictures and people just having a great time. But
on top of the monthly build nights.
That's right. That's where we have the build nights. But I think that about covers everything. So, Matthew, if there's nothing else?
Nothing over here.
All right. We will catch you guys next time.
See you.
Bye.